Well, my friends, welcome to our Silicon Slopes Friday conversation. It's so great to have you here. Again, we're grateful for our sponsors, Minky Couture and Build Them Blessed, for helping us to have these wonderful sessions each Friday. My name is Russ Simon, and I am the founder of Leadership Solutions, and it's my honor to be our introducer today. Our moderator is going to be Wes Clark. He's the chair of the Silicon Slopes Founder Chapter. A little bit about Wes is he's high-tech, mattresses, shoes, and many things in between. What's the common thread? A natural curiosity and a desire to build brands with amazing people. His career has been one of jumping in with both feet and figuring it out as he goes. Whether it's in rotational leadership program at Intel, heading up international marketing, sales, and operations for Purple Mattresses, or leading marketing operations and marketplace at Kizik Shoes, he excels where he's facing new challenges. His passions include his family, building community, and mentoring. And please reach out if he can help you in any way. And our guest today is Rob Morris. We're excited to have him here. Rob is a former NFL linebacker, Super Bowl champion, and resilience explorer whose journey through triumph, adversity, and transformation offers powerful lessons for individuals and organizations alike. A first-round draft pick of the Indianapolis Colts, Rob played 8 seasons in the NFL, starting in Super Bowl, I don't know what XL1 is. 41, thank you. Super Bowl 41, and earning the Ed Block Courage Award for his perseverance through injury and personal loss. At BYU, he was an All-American Conference Defensive Player of the Year and semifinalist for the Butkus Award before being inducted into the BYU Sports Hall of Fame. And I'll just interject on a personal here. I was really excited to bust out my old school BYU hoodie today because during my first season year at BYU, I got to watch Rob play live with my All-Sport Pass, 1998, 1999. Thank you, Rob, making it awesome. So on a personal note, really excited to be with you today. To go along with that, today Rob delivers keynote and team workshops that blend performance principles with mental and emotional resilience. He brings over a decade of experience in wellness, mental health, and corporate culture roles, work that deepens his insight and impact as a speaker. He holds a BA in communications and has completed postgraduate work in mental health counseling. Rob is a proud father of 2 daughters and an avid traveler who has visited over 30 countries in his ongoing pursuit of growth and adventure. And you just came back from one of those countries recently that you might speak a little bit about today. So that'll be really fun. So please help me welcome to our stage today, Wes and Rob.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Excited to get to chat with Rob. We chatted a little bit earlier, and you know, I'm excited to share some of the things. So one of the things that you've done as a coach is develop a framework, and I'd like to touch on that so people can see through your story how that's come about and what experiences are connected to that. So if you don't mind, I'll just read what you shared with me as far as your framework. Are you okay with that?
Perfect.
Okay, so the 7 things that he's built into his resilient system is exposure to challenge, response diversity, guiding principles with flexible execution, adaptive reserves, feedback loops and learning, optimal connectivity, and shared purpose. So you've had a ton of experiences that have really honed this through your career, your life. Tell us a little bit about growing up.
Yeah, so I think the way I was raised, I think our environment, part of resilience is it's an interaction with your environment. And part of how I learned my set of resilient principles is my environment. And my environment growing up was, challenging. I had a father who was a Vietnam veteran, and he was tough, and I'm certain had PTSD that was untreated, And so I was really raised sort of to be a football player, and kind of molded to do that. That's all I did. I played football. I watched football VHS tapes in the off season. That's all I thought about. And so in a lot of ways that made me a great football player, but in other ways I think the loss of being a kid, it shows up a lot in my life today as I look back and I realize, like, oh, laughing and smiling and having fun and playing, like those are part of life too. Those are important. So it really shaped, I think, some of my successes and some of my struggles.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So your background, Idaho boy, growing up with a father that's just pushing you into football. You did some amazing things in high school. You know, it's a football player and then progressed to BYU. Why don't you share it with us, kind of your progression through high school, through college, and then into the pros?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously I played at a small school in Nampa, Idaho, and my dream was to play in the NFL always. But you sort of, with each step, the bar gets raised a little bit. So I thought, oh, maybe I can play college football. And then, you know, you get to college. I originally committed to go play at Stanford with the legendary coach Bill Walsh, who had won 5 Super Bowls. And I remember how excited I was to go to Stanford, and then kind of last second changed my mind, switched over to BYU, and came to BYU as a running back. That was my position I had played my whole life. And about halfway through my freshman year, Lavelle Edwards came cruising up on his little golf cart, and he asked me to get in the cart, and I got in. And I was super resistant to switch to defense, and they had asked me several times, and I told them I didn't want to. And he said, you know, this is a guy I deeply respected. And he said, Rob, he said, if you stay at running back, you can be a good college football player. But if you switch to linebacker, you'll play on Sunday in the NFL. And that was my last practice as a running back. I was a linebacker for the rest of my career, and you know, it turned out pretty well, and ended up getting drafted. Yeah, so you know, in college, I remember having a conversation with my buddy John Tate, who was also a first-round pick, and I remember we had this conversation of like, man, if we can just make enough money someday. He wanted to get a big screen TV and a leather coat that fit him. And that was where our heads were at. And then now you're a first-round draft pick, and the bar keeps getting raised. And then I had some tough setbacks my rookie year. You know, I played on a team that had Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison and Edgerrin James, and I was sort of brought in to be the savior of the defense. And I had a severe knee injury halfway through my rookie year, and that kind of left me wondering if I was going to play at a high level again. So already some setbacks early on in my career, and that just kind of, that up and down trajectory kind of continued for the rest of my NFL career.
Yeah, so you ended up having a number of different surgeries and injuries throughout. How has that built your resiliency, and you know, where have you really tied that into your framework?
Yeah, I think that's the first key point in the framework, is that resilient people, they intentionally expose themselves to challenge. And one of the things that, what happened to me was I was having these challenges that they were very unintentional, and I wasn't growing from them. So, you know, my 7th year in the NFL was a crazy year for me. My wife at the time, we lost a set of triplets during the season. And then I was called in. I was a backup player at this point. I'd had some injuries and wasn't starting. And we had lost this big game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Monday following, or the Wednesday following, the coaches called me. They said, hey, Rob, have you talked to Murph? That was my linebackers coach. And I said, no, I haven't seen him. He said, you should go talk to him. So I went in and talked to him, and he said, we're going to tweak the defense, and we're going to move you from middle linebacker to outside linebacker. And so I'm thinking, sweet, I'll get to learn this one little wrinkle, and I'll get to play a little more. And the more he talked, the more I realized, oh, they're not switching me for a few plays. Like, I'm the new starting outside linebacker. This is a position I've never played before. And I had 4 days to learn it. We had a Monday night football game. And so I learned it, and turns out I was pretty good at it. And we went on this magical playoff run that culminated in us winning the Super Bowl, and I got a lot of credit, and I was on the top of my career. I got a new contract extension. It was sort of like a redemption for all the struggles. And then the next year I came in, and in the fourth game I blew my other knee out, and carted me off the field, and that was it. I never made it back. And so that was sort of the beginning of, I think, of me recognizing that there's maybe more to resilience than just suffering, or than just being part of it. There's a skill piece. But yeah, now I've sort of gotten partway into the story. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, please tell us what the other part is.
Yeah, so, well, the other part really was born from the continued struggles. I think within a year of that injury, of retiring from the NFL, my marriage had fallen apart. I was, admitted to a psychiatric hospital because I was struggling so much with addiction and depression, and in and out of rehab, and eventually started to build my life back up. And that's part of the framework too, is this notion of optimal connectivity. I met some people who offered me opportunities to come and build a wellness department at a company, and then to run their culture departments. And so I started to get connections back with people. So there came a point where I was really interested in these things, and I thought, okay, I'm going to leave my job and pursue a master's degree in mental health counseling. So I get all the way through my degree. I'm in the clinical work. I'm seeing clients, and I'm struggling a lot with cognitive issues. I'm getting lost in sessions, and I'm forgetting things that they're saying, and at the same time I'm having these back problems. So 2 months left in my master's, I drop out, and then I have back surgery just about 2 months later. And then I'm recovering from my back surgery, and I'm out on a hike, and I fall on the hike, and I put my arm down, and I tore all the tendons in my shoulder. And so at this point, I'm thinking, like, I'm Job without the sackcloth and ashes. Like, I don't understand why I can't catch a break in my life. And so that was December 1. 2 months later, I'm hiking, and I started to have these weird pains in my throat. And I ignored them for a while, and I just kind of kept pushing along. And eventually, they started to get bad enough where I was like, I think this might be more than me not being in shape. And I called the doctor, and within weeks of that doctor's appointment, I find myself, in surgery, getting open heart surgery and getting a double bypass. And I was just like, what is happening to me? I'm hooked up to a machine that's breathing for me, that's circulating my blood for me, and I'm 48, and I'm healthy, and I eat right, and I exercise, and why am I going through this? And people kept patting me on the back and telling me how resilient I was, but I felt really broken. And so I thought, I'm gonna learn about this resilience thing. I'm gonna figure it out. So 6 months later, I'm at Lake Powell with some friends. I'm celebrating being young and being alive, and I'm super excited. I'm worked my way back into shape, and the very first wake surfing run of the very first morning, I come out of the water and my hamstring snaps off my pelvis. So I'm back in surgery. And so my interest, that was a very long story to answer your question, but my interest in resilience is born, I think, of suffer and struggle. And the realization that what I had was survival instincts and determination and grit, but that's not resilience. I think that's the willpower piece. And what I needed was the skill power piece. And that's where I started to come up with the framework and read and go on these trips to learn about resilience.
So at what point, and you alluded to this earlier, there is suffering, and oftentimes we don't learn from that suffering. At what point did this switch flip in your mind and you started getting that idea of, hey, there's other things here, and how do I learn from it?
Yeah, I think it flipped from the stark realization that suffering wasn't bringing me joy. Like I wasn't actually learning from it. And I bought a book about resilience. And I read the book, and then I started taking online courses. And,
What book was it?
oh, I can't remember the name. Yeah, I'll find it for you. But actually, I ended up reading several books. But what I learned was that what I really needed to do was to develop a bias toward action. And so I sort of put down the books, and I started intentionally exposing myself to difficult things. One of the pieces of the framework is this concept of response diversity, right? And this is the notion that we need multiple tools to deal with our struggles. I really had one tool, and that was to grit my teeth and white knuckle my way through life. And I started to learn breath work, and I started to get into meditation and do cold exposure. And so I think, Wes, what I learned was that I was designing my life because of all my setbacks to be easy. And I think that was a reasonable response, but it wasn't serving me. And so I needed to start to learn to do hard things again. And when you start to do hard things, you naturally learn how to respond to those things. So now I'm developing a more diverse set of responses that I could use to deal with my struggles.
That's great. If you don't mind, I'd like to backtrack just a little bit. You shared an experience with LaVell Edwards, legendary coach, that huge opportunity to play for him. If you had to distill 3 things out of your college career and your experience playing at BYU, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah. Can I combine it? Can I combine LaVell and Tony Dungy together?
Yeah.
Because they're both in this cut from the same mold. 42 seasons those guys coached, and they had 2 losing seasons. That was part of my interest too, is how did they do that? And so I would say that the number one thing is they did it because they had rock solid core values. Tony believed that if you build a better man, you build a better football player. And LaVell believed that if you build relationships with players, then the players will play better. And so I think the one thing I learned, the first thing I would say was to establish core values and don't deviate from them. This was another area that I was extremely lacking in. I didn't have any strong core values to get me through those things. So I would have a surgery and I would just flounder. I had no anchor. So first thing I learned from those 2 was to have an anchor. Second thing I learned, again, is that first one that we talk a lot about, is the importance of intentionally exposing yourself to challenge. So a good example is in the NFL, you spend an inordinate amount of time working on these critical scenarios that pop up once in a while. And with the Colts and with at BYU, I think we won because we were good at those scenarios. So we practiced them so many times that when it came the game time, that we were ready. So I would say that would be the second thing that I would learn. And the third thing is kind of a little bit unrelated to resilience, although maybe not, is that Tony had this great saying that's death by inches. And it was this notion that it's the little things that will kill you, that will get you in trouble in the game. And, he wanted us to tuck our shirts in practice because you needed them tucked in the game. There was no scuffles in practice, no fights. Why? Because you can't do it in the game. So I think it was that notion of details really matter.
Yeah, kind of the you play like you practice mentality.
Yeah, 100%.
So you've talked about connectivity and connecting. For the business people that are here, how would you recommend, or what would you say in terms of building their network and proactively going about making those connections they need?
So I would say in my framework, it's not connecting, it's optimal connectivity. And so I think, and what I mean by that is sometimes in our personal life or in business, we can be overconnected or connected to the wrong things or relying on the wrong types of connections. And I don't, I don't claim to be like a business expert, but I have seen places where a business is so connected to one person or one system or one structure that if there's a failure in that system, the whole thing collapses. And so I think to look at the way the internal structures or the systems of your business or your personal life, how are they connected, and is that done in an optimal way, I think is sort of a critical piece, right?
So going to your NFL career, being in a Super Bowl winning team is got to be just an experience most of us won't ever experience, and just something that puts you on the top of the world. Talk about that year and shared purpose and how that fits into that achievement.
Yeah, it was massive, and we had, so a lot of times your team or your corporation or it takes on the characteristics of your leader. And so Tony was a big on a family, right? And so we had this theme throughout that year that it was our time, us, our team, like our time. This is how we're going to win. And we had some major setbacks. I mean, we started, I think, 9-0, and then we played Jacksonville, a bad team, who beat us like 44-16, and they rushed for over 300 yards. A reporter said they would have rushed for more, but the end zone kept getting in the way. And so a good side note is that resurrected my career, but it wasn't so good for our team. But being part of that, the connection of the group, we always found ways within the organization to win, right? So we had this high-powered offense. First playoff game, we played the Chiefs. They had the second-ranked running back, Larry Johnson. Our defense was ranked dead last in stopping the run, and we held him to 30 yards and won the game. Next game, we're playing the Baltimore Ravens. We don't score a single touchdown, so you would think there's no way you win without a touchdown. We kick 5 field goals, the defense plays good, we win the game. So we just kept finding ways. And I think that's a piece of the optimal connectivity is when you're top heavy or you rely too much on one system, the other parts of the system don't have an opportunity to shine. And in our organization, it was like next man up. Who's going to be the one that steps up this week?
Would it be safe to say that you guys played for each other?
100%, yeah. Which is unique in the NFL because it's a very dog-eat-dog world. You're always looking over your shoulder. But that was built by Coach Dungy very intentionally. Like if you didn't fit in the system, if you couldn't cooperate, if you couldn't be a team guy, he just got rid of you. Like there wasn't a negotiation. And it was a core value of him to bring in the right people to the organization. So you really didn't see those issues.
And this may be a bit of a rabbit hole for me personally, curious. Would you say that any team that wins, say, the Super Bowl, that they have to play on that level where it's more than just about individuals? Or have you seen teams in the NFL where it's purely, we just have enough individual, high-powered people that we can just win? Is that a unifying theme that you would say is in all champions?
So I would say no, it's not, with the caveat. But when you look at the teams that have staying power, like the Colts of my era, the Patriots, the Chiefs of today, those teams that are continually going back at a high level, then it absolutely has to do with that. Every once in a while, you'll see a team that will rise to the top, get a Super Bowl win, and then disappear. And those teams are built for 1 year. And I think you could do that in your organization too. You could build it to win for a year, or you could build something that wins year over year. And so that was what was unique about Tony Dungy and Lavelle Edwards. 42 seasons with 2 losing seasons. And guess which ones those were? It was Tony's first and Lavelle's second. And so that's a pretty amazing track record.
Yeah, that is amazing. So for you, you reach this pinnacle and you have this kind of a crash.
It wasn't really kind of a crash. It was a full-blown crash.
Okay. I was being polite. So you talked about a little bit of what set you up for that in your youth. Can you kind of contrast that? Like, what set it up from your youth and what that looked like on the other side?
Yeah, so what it was that I only had one identity and one purpose, and that was to be a football player. And so when that was removed from my life, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have confidence that I could do anything else. It was really a full-blown identity crisis. And yeah, I don't know, that's what it was. It was a loss of purpose, a loss of my core identity. My value lied in one thing, in winning football games, being good at playing football. And when that was removed, I didn't feel I had any value. And when you don't feel like you have any value, then
take that trip
sink
down.
into those depths.
Yeah, and I would say it's safe to say that a lot of us tie that same identity to our job. And when we lose a job, it really causes us to have that depression and hit those depths. What would you say to somebody that's maybe lost a job and going through that journey that would help them get back up out of it?
I think I would say take action, any action, some sort of action, create movement. You know, we try to, core values for me are sticky because people put them on the wall, and if they're not lived, for me a core value is momentum. I need to be moving towards something, even if it's not a permanent thing. I think I mentioned before, someone asked me, so did you start doing this once you finish your career? And my answer was, I'm still kind of trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. But to have movement in life, I think is critical. So I would tell that person to have a bias toward action, which quite frankly has saved me from slipping right back into the place that I was. I still don't really feel that I have like my solid purpose, but I do things, right? I told you before, I just got back from this trip to Finland, and that, like, just go do something.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell us, so you have that bias for action. You just jumped into something that you didn't know much about when you signed up for it. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, there's a Finnish concept called sisu, which is this idea of sort of extraordinary determination with an action mindset, and really about latent power. So this is what kicks in when you don't have anything left in the tank. Like, it's truly the next level. And I wanted to learn about it. And so I typed into our AI overlords, you know, I want to learn about sisu, I want to learn about it in Finland, and I want to learn about it in harsh conditions. And looking back, I'm realizing that maybe those weren't the prompts that I should have used, but
and how did you, how did you come up with Finland? Why Finland?
That's, so sisu, this concept of sisu, it's really a cultural concept in Finland. Okay. And it's born of their, you know, long battles of independence. You know, they share a 1,400-mile border with Russia. And it's sort of this inner fortitude. And I was real curious about it. I wanted to learn about it. And so I went, and I sort of jumped into it, and I got there, and it was great. The first morning we do some breath work, and I'm like, this is perfect. This is what I'm in for. And we did some journaling and some intention setting, and we did some acceptance and commitment therapy. And then they're like, okay, come up here and stand on this bed of nails. And we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, stand on these nails. It's going to hurt really bad, and breathe through it. And we would do that, and then we would eat lunch, and then they would say, we're going to meet for a hike, so pack your bags. Here's a weight to put in it. Oh, and by the way, your dress for the hike is shoes and shorts. And
And it's snowing.
This is Finland. We're 15 kilometers south of the Arctic Circle, and snowing, and it's freezing. You just had to go do it. That was the point, is to expose yourself to challenging things and to recognize that really there's only one battle you need to win, and that's the one with the voice in your head. I think that was my big takeaway of, and continually throughout the week, we were just exposed to new challenges. Whether it was for me, the language barrier, they were all Dutch people except me. I didn't really look into that before I signed up for it. And so I felt, I think I cried every night because I felt, what am I doing here? And then I would wake up the next morning and go back at it and have these amazing experiences and come in at night and then cry. But that's sort of the nature of resilience, is you just keep going. There's not like an end destination, it's a process. And I think this relates to businesses, because what businesses are always trying to do is optimize, and I don't think that's the right thing. I think what you want to do is build capacity in people, and then they'll optimize on their own. But you go in and you try to constantly use these hacks in your life or with your business, when what you really need to do is to build a big capacity, and then when the trials come, you can call on that capacity to overcome them.
I love that. Build capacity through people and let them optimize. Love that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Dungy's comment about building a better man.
Yeah, build a better man and you get a better football player.
Yeah. So get your questions ready. I've got a couple more here for Rob, but then excited to get your questions and comments and the conversation, take the conversation out into the open. So what have you done, or how do you feel gratitude fits into your framework?
Yeah, I think it fits in a couple places. It fits in this notion of response diversity. I think gratitude can be a response to challenge. I like to journal. It's a fairly new thing for me, but I journal every day. And it's not always gratitude, but a lot of times it is acknowledging that what I'm experiencing is part of life, which I think in some respects fits into the gratitude category. You're recognizing that this is just part of the deal. And I think it can also fit into the guiding principles category of, if you have a principle in your life that you're going to be grateful for, not just the good things, but for the tough things, then I think the outcome is you start to build a different relationship with the tough things. And they stop becoming something that, they become something that you recognize is short-term suffering and long-term growth. But without that feeling of gratitude, it just becomes suffering. I think we talked briefly about the NVIDIA, what's his name?
Yeah, I'm on the spot. I lost his
Jensen, the NVIDIA CEO, and he speaks to these Stanford students, and he wishes them suffering. Yeah. And I think that's part of the story, too, and I would never claim to say that that guy's not right. But I think you wish someone suffering with the right relationship with that suffering, to recognize that what comes after the suffering is sort of the key part.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have another couple of questions, but I want to open it up to you guys so that we can broaden this conversation. And Russ will bring the microphone around for the conversations.
I'll be real brief. First of all, thank you for the pizza. I really enjoyed that. This is the only place I have pizza. A few years ago, the organization that I was affiliated with recognized Steve Young, and just an incredible, accomplished athlete by any stretch. He was asked by someone who wasn't athletic, didn't have those sorts of accomplishments, of course, but he mentioned to Steve that he would never be able to achieve what Steve achieved. And Steve refocused him, and he says, you know what's really the most important is touching lives. And that's what you need to build your life on is touching lives, because you're going to go a lot further. So I pose that question to you. I mean, obviously you're NFL player and very accomplished athlete and a businessman as well. But is that something that you stop to consider is the influence that you're having with other people and lifting them up and touching their lives? So
to maybe reframe that just in a question form, how have you intentionally lifted others up?
Yeah, thanks for that question, by the way. And I don't know Steve very well, but all my interactions with him have been super amazing. I think that I went down this path for me, and I think that's important because I recognized at some point. So when I was the VP of culture and community at a company, a tech company, and I would go and I would speak at these events, and people would come up and tell me how it impacted them. But the difficult part was that I wasn't really in alignment with what I was saying in my own life. And so what's the most beautiful thing for me right now is that I feel more in alignment, and I think because of that I have a greater impact to touch people's lives. So it's born of sort of a selfish desire to make my own life better. But I think the byproduct of that is that it comes across as, I hope, more genuine and more real, instead of more, here's something I read in a book and now I'm going to tell you about it, which was kind of my life up until a year and a half ago. So yeah, I think it's really important for me to hopefully touch people's lives, but recognizing if I don't stay in alignment with my own life, it's sort of
disingenuous.
It's a disingenuous, and I think to some extent people will feel that. I'm not sure I totally answered your question, but I do think it's important to live your life or to have a business where it's people-focused and people-centered, and otherwise I just don't think you have long-term success.
Yeah, Rob, thanks for sharing your story. So I'm just wondering, so maybe in your life and in your career, so can you show something you learned from you probably make a lot of friends and you have a lot of mentors. So would you mind sharing us some lessons you have learned from your friends in your life, in your career, and learn from your mentors?
Oh, that's a great question. A good mentor will help you to recognize that you're enough, that you're capable, will inspire confidence. The very best people that I've had in my life have been the ones that have inspired me, not necessarily given me some brilliant business principle, but have convinced me that I have value and that I have worth. And that might be unique to me specifically because I struggled so much with that. But look, if I want business tips or strategy, I can get on ChatGPT or I can read a book. But what I really want from my friends and mentors is I want to feel inspired. I want to feel uplifted. I want to feel like I have value. So that's been a big change in my life too. I used to surround myself with people that I thought I could get something from. What can I get from this person? And now I try to surround myself with people that are like, how does my nervous system feel around this person? Do I feel inspired by them? Do they feel inspired by me? Is it a reciprocal relationship? Or is it just one person taking?
Rob, thanks for coming here today. As an alum, it was awesome watching you play. You're clearly one of the top linebackers all time at BYU.
Thank you.
And very few get to go on to the NFL, let alone to win a Super Bowl. So congrats. I appreciate you opening up today. But I want to talk about sports for just a second. I'm curious, given your career both at the Y and in Indianapolis, can you pick out one play at BYU, one play with the Colts, where that was like your best play, the one that's most memorable all time, and why?
Oh.
No pressure.
Well, the BYU one I think is fairly easy because it's a fan favorite, and he just, yeah, you can tell it. I got an interception against New Mexico, and I ran it for a touchdown, and I dove across the goal line, and then I flipped over on my back, and I did a grass angel in the snow, and got a penalty, and our kicker missed the extra point, which broke his streak that would have been the longest in BYU history or something, which I didn't really care about because it's a kicker, not really a teammate. So, and I think, you know, in the NFL, yes, same thing. It was, I got an interception from Drew Brees, and it was crazy because it didn't end quite the way I was hoping it would end. But I got the interception, and I'm running down the sideline, and the clock is ticking down, and I can see the clock, and I'm running, and I get in, and the clock is about to expire, and I get out of bounds so we can kick a field goal to win the game. And I would have been the hero, but there was a penalty, and we went to overtime, and Peyton threw a touchdown, and then guess who got all the credit for the win? Peyton Manning, like he needed some more credit, my one chance to have glory. But yeah, to intercept Drew Brees, that was kind of cool.
Two definite highlights.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, this is great stuff today. You talked about your kind of being identified with like a single identity of being a football player and winning football games, and how difficult that was when that went away. Do you think, in your opinion, can people achieve this high level of greatness without having that single identity? Can you, like, when you look back on your life, could it have been different? Could you have been more identified with other parts of your life? Or was that part of the cost? You had to go all in on it.
Is this a trick question?
No.
You know, to some extent, I would say the former is true, that you, in some respects, you do have to have singleness of purpose. But I think that singleness of purpose is different from singleness of identity. And I think where I struggled was I conflated I thought they were the same. If my purpose is to be a football player, then my identity must be to be a football player. But I think that if at a younger age I would have been told, look, this is a skill set and a talent that you have, and if you cultivate it with sort of singleness of mind, you'll have it, but it's not who you are, and it's not where you find value. And so pursue that with full strength and vigor. Recognize that really ultimately the outcome is not in your control. And so I think that if we can help people focus on the process, like I think that, you know, the great lie we tell our kids is you can be anything, you can do anything you want. It's just not true. Like the gentleman said, not everybody can play on Sunday. Having said that, the same set of traits that will get you to play on Sunday or in a Super Bowl can also make you a successful cello player or, you know, mailman or whatever it is that you want to be great at. So I think that, yeah, I'm sort of waffling on the answer, but it's very much sort of singleness of purpose versus singleness of identity in my mind.
Incredible answer, I think. That's really wise.
I might be the only one in this room that just learned more about you as a football player than as a friend. Everything you stand for resilience and the growth that you've expressed to us today is the person that I have known you as, and it's been really fun to learn about your career in football as well today. But one of the things that stood out to me is you mentioned, and I know this about you now and how strongly you stand by your core values, but you mentioned that there was a time where you didn't know what those were. Can you explain maybe your journey to discovering what those were and knowing, there's a lot of ways we can develop our core values. We do that both in business and in our personal lives, but sometimes it's hard to know. Can you explain like how you knew and you landed on your core values?
This is a question I can totally answer. So I had done a million of these core value exercises, and I would come up with, they're a bit like a psychometric test. You sort of answer it the way that you want yourself to answer, the way that you view yourself. So here's how I look at core values now, is they need to be things that you can rely on that will get you unstuck. So I really only have a few: curiosity, momentum, alignment, and connection. And so I know that when I'm stuck, when I'm really struggling, I can be like, okay, what is missing in your life right now? Oh, I don't have momentum, I need to take action. Or, oh, I'm isolating myself from my friends, I need to connect. So I think, yes, do the discovery of core values and do the exercises, and then trim them down by saying, okay, which one of these can I turn to in like an emergent situation? When life feels overwhelming, which one of these gets me out of the rut? That's how I did it. I don't know if that's like a technical way, but I just realized like I had all these written down core values. I didn't really know how to operationalize them. And so I would say make sure that they're core values that you can operationalize and take action on.
That I really like. Thank you. Any other questions? So my last question, and we can wrap up with this, is as you look back on your life, are there things that you would do differently, or would you double down on them and lean into them more than you did?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, how much time do we have for the do differently category? But I would say what I would do differently, and quite frankly, I'm not sure that this was my fault that I did it this way. I think it was largely my environment. But I think I would have spent more time cultivating other talents and abilities, and I should start doing that now. But I would do that differently. I would also work harder at cultivating my relationships, which I think I do better now, but I just didn't. I feel a lot of social anxiety, and I feel a lot of anxiety about my worth, and I think that was a big part of the substance abuse stuff, was just trying to feel good about myself. And so I would have learned earlier or spent more time like cultivating deep relationships with fewer people, instead of having a lot of sort of surface relationships with a lot of people. What was the second part of the question?
Anything that you look back and think, oh, I should have doubled down on that or leaned more into that?
Yeah, homework. No, I'm serious. I wish I would have paid more attention. Like, I wish I would have spent more time on academics and like really, because now I'm very curious. And I'm very, I really want to learn, but my brain doesn't learn as well now because I ran into people for a living. And so I really wish that I would have doubled down on school and and found something that I was passionate about. Because when my career was over, I didn't have a fallback that I loved. I think I went to the counselor and was like, which degree can I get the quickest? And so it was communications. Not that that's not a good degree, but yeah, I think I wish that's what I would have done.
Thank you. I really appreciate your genuineness and your authenticity and just being real with us. And I have learned a lot, and it's been fun to have this conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It feels good to be genuine and authentic. It hasn't always been the case, so I'm glad that I can do that now. walk out, feeling proud about that.
Good. Well, let's give him a round of applause.